Welcome to Calgary Talks, the social series. I have a chance to talk to great Calgarians on a regular basis, and this series is welcoming you into all of those conversations. Hi everybody, welcome back to Calgary Talks, the social series. We have a fabulous guest today. It's Lourdes Juan. She's co-founder and CEO of Knead Tech. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what Knead Tech is and what inspired you to start it up.
Sure. Actually, so my background is in urban planning. It's not in the tech sector at all. But about 13 years ago, I rescued, or what they call rescued, 200 pounds of bread from a bakery that was about to be thrown into the landfill, picked it up with my cousin, dropped it off at the Calgary drop-in center, and the gentleman at the loading dock said, this is going to serve about 3,000 people. We serve bagged lunches. They do a lot at the drop-in center, and he said this is going to go a long way. So I started really, thinking about food waste and if other bakeries and grocery stores were wasting food and how we could just logistically get an army of folks to get that food to service agencies in need.
I like it.
I thought you'd like a good pun. And then we grew a charitable foundation called the Leftovers Foundation. Within this charity, so it is one of Canada's largest food rescue charities, we built a software actually with girls from Bishop McNally High School who helped prototype the app. 14-year-olds are much better at technology than at the time a 30-something-year-old. So they helped prototype this technology. They partnered us with a mentor through this program called Technovation, and our software was born. And then a few years ago, I really, found that I wanted to grow the impact of food rescue, and other folks were doing food rescue around the world. So we thought, okay, what if we pull the technology out of the charity and start a tech company? Calgary, is very big in the tech sector right now. We thought we would get a lot of support, and so off we went, off to the races, and we started Knead Technologies.
That's amazing. So tell me how the platform works.
Sure. The act of food rescue, so taking perishable food, it's mostly perishable. Think of like taking groceries home from one spot from the grocery store to your home. There's lots of sort of logistics involved when we're taking perishable food and bringing it to vulnerable folks. So we need to make sure that the temperatures are safe, that there's safe food handling involved, that we track the metrics of how many pounds of food are rescued, that the drive is not more than 20 minutes, according to Alberta health standards. And so all of these logistics, and if we take all of those and transpose those into carbon emission metrics, we can really understand the impact that food rescue is having in the ecosystem of waste management. So that's what our software does. So it's volunteer management, it's logistics tracking. I like to kind of think about it as the Uber of food rescue. It's the most simple way to think of it. And it gives the nonprofits or food rescue organizations and food banks all of their metrics and all of the impact that they've done within the year so that they can apply for more funding and really feel good about all the impact that they've done throughout the year.
It's pretty amazing that you have the ability to track all of those things because it allows you to track your successes. It also shows you where you're maybe not performing as well as you could or should be. Tell me a little bit about that. What have been, some of your biggest successes and what challenges do you still have before you when it comes to food rescue?
At the end of the day, we don't want any food waste. But sadly, globally, we waste $940 billion worth of food. In Canada, it's just over half of what we produce is wasted. And so there's two things that we want to do here. We want to make sure that folks know about food rescue, that in this pyramid, in this ecosystem of food waste management, there's a point in time where the food is still good, it can still get to those that need it. We may not be able to sell it for market value, but it can get donated. And so that redirection of food is really important. And it's important for folks to have that as top of mind because food waste happens all the time. It happens at the farm level, at the grocery store, on our own plates at home. So it's important to have that top of mind. So this behavioral change, I think, is one of the important parts. The second part is if we aren't wasting food at the beginning, that's even better. So we've worked with, here in Calgary, a few bakeries that have actually seen through the software how much food they're wasting. Mm-hmm. And they have all of this data insight now of, okay, well, maybe on Wednesdays we shouldn't bake that much, or maybe during this time of the year, we're not going to be selling that much for whatever reason. And so now they have those insights, and then they can run their business more efficiently. And we've seen some of those numbers, and we've seen some of that food waste right from the source be reduced.
That's pretty incredible to be able to eliminate the waste in the first place. And I imagine there's a lot of organizations that are more efficient now, and productivity is better. So this is incredible. And I understand that you've been invited to South by Southwest.
We have.
The only Alberta company going?
The only Alberta company, and one of 5 Canadian companies.
That's pretty impressive. How did all of that come about, and what do you hope to do while you're there?
It's a little daunting, I will say. It'll be the biggest audience I've ever pitched to. 3 minutes is not a long time, but it can seem like a long time when you're pitching your company. How did it happen? So back in a couple years ago, when we first started the company, Alberta Innovate sent 50 companies to South by, which is the largest music, film, and tech conference, I think, in the world. And it was pretty exciting to be there. Lots of energy. You know, I think that there's lots of parallels of Austin and Calgary. Mm-hmm. And so we all went. There was 50, mostly startups, that went to go show who Alberta was. And that was really exciting to be part of that. Then last year, so we went and we had a great time, made a ton of connections, particularly in the food scene down there. And last year, there was an opportunity just to apply for the pitch competition. And I've pitched 100 times. So I thought, I'm just going to do it. This probably won't go anywhere. But the application wasn't very long, and I thought, I'll just try. And this is globally. Like, everyone is coming from every place around the world applying. And we're like this teeny tiny Calgary, Alberta, Canada company. So I applied and didn't hear anything, and I thought, oh, that's okay. As a startup, we apply for stuff all the time, whether we get it or not. And then a few months ago, we heard that we were a finalist and that we were 1 in 5 in the AgTech community. So I emailed Alberta Innovates right away. I said, oh, we're part of this, and can you tell me the other Alberta companies that'll be there? And they said, you're the only one. Which,
no pressure at all.
No pressure. Yeah, gulped very hard. But so I've been trying to memorize this 3-minute pitch for, it's actually this Saturday in less than a week. And we're pretty excited to show Calgary and Calgary Tech and Calgary social impact tech at a global scale. So I think the other competitors are from Tokyo and Kuala Lumpur and working on robotics and all this kind of things. But I'm still excited to show it all off.
You know what? It's not that you're still excited. You should be super proud of yourself and very excited. All of us are going to be rooting for you. What you've managed to create is a game changer.
Thank you.
On the global level, when we look at food security. So I want you to keep that in mind. We are all going to be cheering for you while you're down there. So tell me about how Calgary's tech environment helped your success.
So as you know, I don't have a tech background. I'm not a technical founder. My co-founder is, 2 of them are. And, we really didn't know where to go. But there was this place called Platform Calgary, and they had a lot of incubator programs. They had the incubator program that we were a part of, but they also had resources and access to other incubator and what they call accelerator programs, which are like 3 to 6 month learning opportunities where you're in a group with a bunch of startups. And so I joined every single one that I could get into. I think I've done 7. I'm like a bit of a
You're
junkie.
The poster child.
Junkie for accelerator programs. But I wanted to learn because I don't come from this sector. So why not meet as many people as possible? And so I did that. So, Platform Calgary was a really big catalyst in helping us meet the right folks and get into the right programs and understand all of the tech vernacular, which is, was so new to me, but it has now come second nature. And so Calgary's been very, very supportive in the tech sector, and particularly women in tech. I have sort of found my community of women founders, and that's been really, really helpful.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I have worked with the former ambassador to the U.S., David Cohen, to host women in tech and help them understand how they can break into the U.S. market as well. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we are learning through the statistics is that in Calgary, the tech scene is very open to women. And I'd love to hear your experience and your feeling on why we are so open to that.
For those not in tech that are listening, I had to do an investment round. We wanted to do an investment round, very common with tech companies. So our first round is called pre-seed. It's just like you're a baby company, you raise a little bit of money, you hit your milestones, and then you start raising more and more. And so, in Calgary, we had the sort of big ones to look up to. There was Benevity, there was Neo Financial, like those were these literal unicorns that we could look up to, and they were right here in Calgary. So I think that alone really helps sets the stage. But for women, 2% of venture funding go to women. So 98% go to our male counterparts, even though we perform better. Within that 2%, something like 0.34 or even under that go to women of color. And so I thought, we hear these statistics and they're appalling. But then when you live that statistic, when I was living the fact that I was trying to get investment from these folks, from traditional investors and social impact investors, it was really hard. It was really, really difficult.
What made it difficult? Is it the fact that they're used to hearing a pitch delivered a certain way? Is it because of the networks that they hang out in? What do you think some of the challenges are?
It's certainly networks, and I'm sure you can relate, being a woman in politics. It's not easy. We get less vitriol, but we get a lot of no's and we get a lot of ghosting activity happening with investors. It is network, but also I had read this study that really resonated, and it said that, when women get asked about their companies, whether they're, pitching on stage or when they're meeting investors, women get asked questions like, how do you think you're going to operate this business? Or is it going to be difficult for you balancing, your family life, you have children, which a question I actually did get, and running a business? Like, how is that all going to come together for you? The questions seem respectful in the moment, and then when you look back at them, you're sort of like, actually, if I were a man, you would not ask me those questions. So when men get asked questions, the study, went broad stroke across a lot of different sectors. Men get asked, what is your big vision? What do you see for this company? How are you going to change the game? And that really resonated with me because those are exactly the questions and the type of questions that women versus men get asked. And it's a really important differentiation because it's easier to say no to somebody who, if you can pick apart how to operate a business, how you're going to balance work, life, family, it's easier to pick that apart than to pick apart, tell me what your grand vision of this world is.
So how do you deal with it? Do you just answer the question you wish to answer rather than exactly what they're posing to you? How do you manage that?
I wish I should have done that.
Well, it's a good thing we're talking.
Yeah. So at first, it was really difficult. I would just answer normally, like this is, I would get into all of the technical language of how we were going to do it and what our milestones are and at what the timeline was. We were going to reach these milestones. And then when I sat back and started to think about how to answer the questions, I pivoted to talking about, this is our, plan right now, but what we really want to see is this. And so we always talk about this thing in food waste, about food rescue kind of being this fourth bin. Mm-hmm. And I always go to that because it kind of gets folks thinking about, okay, this woman is, talking about operating, but she's also got this big vision. And it's not a question that they've asked, but something that I've just thrown at them for them to sort of think about. But at first I was, very submissive into just answering those questions.
Well, it's not even submissive, it's how we're trained, right?
Yes,
we're all trained to answer the question that's posed to you. And it's not really any different when you're doing interviews as well.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't get the question that you want. And so you've got to figure out how to give the answer that you really need to demonstrate what it is that you're trying to get across. So, good for you. And I have to ask you another question. So the idea of how you're going to balance, work and family life. Tell me a little bit about what family means to you. And I don't just mean your own immediate family, but is there something about family and the way you were brought up and, the things that you believe in that drove you to do this work?
My dad passed away suddenly back in 2022. And since then, and thank you for your support, by the way.
Of course.
I know that you lost your dad as well.
It is a devastating time.
It's so hard.
It's
so, when you lose someone so close to you. So we are Filipino, we're a really tight-knit family. And so that was really tough. So I've been thinking a lot about this actually since 2022. How did my upbringing kind of shape who I am today and the relationship that I have with my sisters and my mom? Because that's what's really important. I love my work. I love what I do. My husband jokes that I don't have a hobby. But it's like, I love my work so much.
I might have the same problem.
We might have that in common. Work has always felt, like quite a love of mine. And so it doesn't feel like work. But my family has been very supportive. And ever since we were small, there were two things that I always remember growing up. Food all the time. I mean, if you walk into a Filipino family's house, there's no hello. The first question is, did you eat yet? Mm-hmm. And that sort of, was foundation for celebrations around food, making sure that everyone was well, making sure that everyone was well fed. But two, there were always people around. And so we were always relying on our community to support us. And I have taken that into my work. I cannot run 3 businesses, and at one point 3 businesses and 2 charities by myself. It has to be a community event, and it has to be celebrated every day that we get to work together and that we get to do really cool things together. And that is just an extension of my family. I actually live like 2 or 3 blocks away from both sisters and my mom. Like, we have taken this to the extreme. But yeah, very family oriented. And that makes for a very community-oriented entrepreneurship journey.
That's a great perspective. I mean, if you were raised in a family where everyone was together and celebrating each other and lifting each other up, you get into things with that same spirit of wanting to bring people together. Your example that you just gave when you're pitching of talking about the 4th bin, that's a brilliant visual. Because I think it makes people think about things differently. Food security, food insecurity, that's terminology that gets tossed around, and sometimes people don't quite get it. Yes. But that 4th bin analogy is a really good one. So tell me, when it comes to food security, what do we need to do to level up? How do we do this better in Calgary? And then how do we port that out to the world?
Yeah, I think that goes back to community. It goes back to looking out for each other. There's not going to be one solution that fixes food security. We know that. It's not going to be a food bank. It's not going to be food rescue. It's not going to be universal basic income. It's going to be everyone coming together and doing all of these things and keeping those things top of mind and making sure we're taking care of our neighbors. I mean, very broadly, that's what it's going to take, is that folks need to be looking out for their neighbors, and Calgarians need to be looking after Calgarians, which I think we're really good at. I mean,
I think we are.
The flood, the water main break. I mean, every one of these better than I do, but it's at those points of crisis that we really come together. I hope that it's not only during these points, though. Like, I think what I my big vision is that we think about doing that every day. Small acts of kindness, big acts of kindness, investing and caring about social impact and social impact initiatives, I think are really important parts of getting the work done together.
I think Calgarians just have that. And I think that's what attracts people to Calgary.
Yes.
I think that's why you see so many like-minded people in this city, because when you come here, you're embraced for who you are. And you're on a journey towards success with other people.
Yes, absolutely.
And people seem interested in mutual prosperity for everyone. And that's the thing I love about this city.
Me too. You know, actually one of the first, when I started Leftovers, the charitable foundation, and we were looking for food donors, it wasn't hard to get food donors. You know, I remember our first batch of folks that were donating food, Sidewalk Citizen, Aviv Friad.
I remember you telling me that.
Yes, yeah. Phil and Sebastian. Like, we were picking up from these very, very hyper-local places that are now several locations that we still get to pick up from, that Leftovers still has that community and has those pickups. And so it was all of these entrepreneurs who were doing it together, saying yes to each other, that really made the whole thing work.
And that's the incredible thing about Calgary. Like when we look at the situation we're in, where we are faced with threats of tariffs, and we stop and examine what we have been doing locally, there is so much good work happening in this city. I was really pleased to hear that the city of Calgary as a corporation was sourcing 95%
Oh, wow.
within Canada, a lot of it very local in our city.
That's great.
It is great. So I think we've got a very good thing happening, and I think a lot of people can use the examples that we provide them. So, you know, let me ask you a final question. If you could tell Calgarians how they can limit food waste and how they can contribute to food security, what would you say?
Taylor Berry from the Calgary Foundation, who I'm a huge fan of, I always say this thing I used to say this, where it was like, you know, food security is when folks just don't know where their next meal is going to come from. They have to, you know, make impossible choices. Are they choosing to feed themselves or choosing to feed their kids? But in fact, Taylor had said this at an article that I read, and she said whole families are skipping meals. It's not just the parents anymore. It's entire families. And so if we keep that in the back of our mind and know that I think it's 25%, so almost a quarter of Calgarians could use the extra help, that's what we need to be thinking of. And so from a food rescue perspective, Leftovers is very much volunteer run. The app allows you to volunteer over your lunch break. It allows you to go to Phil and Sebastian and bring food over to the Alpha House for snacks within like a 30-minute time frame. And so for Calgarians who are looking to help out, just doing these very small acts of kindness, of volunteerism really, really help. Broadly, when we talk about food waste, like I said, it happens at every level of the supply chain. And so if we can just think about only buying what we need, buying local, buying smaller amounts that we know we're going to finish, supporting our local grocers and our local food system is so important. And reading those labels and knowing where your food is coming from, and then going home, treating that food with respect, cooking it for your family, and then, or, supporting your local restaurant, and then making sure nothing goes to waste, making sure we finish all that food on our plate. I mean, these are just small things that are gonna, at the end of the day, make a really big difference.
Thank you for breaking down for us how we can help, and thank you for breaking down the issue. I appreciate everything you've done. You have met with success in our city, and it just makes me so proud of you staying true to your vision. So thank you for everything you do. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.